Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another episode in the Let's Get Physical series. Today we are talking about building muscle, which is my personal favorite topic in the entire series. I have just totally enjoyed my muscle building experience. And I have to say, there are a lot of things that I learned that I didn't realize. So I'm really excited to bring you today's topic because I think that there's maybe not enough accessible information out there about it. And as with anything, there's always misconceptions. So I want to dive right into it. And the first thing I want to talk about is the reasons why muscle building is so beneficial and why it's being talked about. You may see more and more in the online space that it's definitely becoming something that we're talking about is building muscle. And I know, especially for us women, and that's not a this is not a blanket statement. It's not an across the board statement. Our training like goals are totally personal. But I know for a lot of women, they are afraid of building muscle for the reason that they don't want to get that quote unquote bulky look. They don't want to have super high amounts of muscle mass. But I want to reassure you, and if you've been following me on Instagram, you know that I've talked about this before. But I do want to reassure you that if that is a concern for you, that it's actually incredibly hard as a woman to get significant amounts of muscle mass. It is definitely possible, but it takes a very rigorous and intense strategy to get there. And the reason for that is because women have low amounts of testosterone compared to men. I believe it's something like men have 10 times the amount of testosterone than women, because we do have a bit in our system, but we are predominantly estrogen compared to men. So, testosterone is like the muscle building accelerator. And that is why men can really pack on those muscle gains, is because they have a higher amount of testosterone. So, really not something to be super concerned about. But the nice thing is, when you do build the muscle, you're still going to get that quote unquote tone. Because I know a lot of women are out there wanting that goal of getting kind of tone, which is more like that sculpted muscle look. And my misconception back in the day was I thought that came from cardio. And, I thought that when I would lose maybe, let's say, fat, that somehow my muscles would like appear. I don't, maybe I'm alone in that, but that's personally what I thought would bring me a toned physique, but it's actually the opposite. It's building muscle that's going to cause that sculpted look to appear, and it's actually going to reduce body fat. So that's one thing that I do want to mention. So um, I know that muscle building and weightlifting, that all kind of sounds like what maybe a man would do. And I hate to be stereotypical, that's not my intention at all. But I know that that is a lot of time what comes to mind. So I just wanted to kind of get that out in the open so that you can just kind of, like, okay, it's not so scary and it's going to be okay. Um, so, the reasons why muscle building is so beneficial, I have quite a few reasons listed. And number one is you have increased bone density and tissue health, which is so important as we age. As we get older, especially as women, we have increased risk of what's called osteoporosis, which is basically the frailty and the wearing away of our bone density. So, the more that we stimulate that bone and that we increase that tissue health, the better off we will have in the future for our health. Let's say maybe you would fall or something maybe in your 70s or your 80s. When you have that built up over time, there's less risk of fracture or a broken bone or, just anything like that. So super helpful to have this as we age. Another benefit is increased metabolic efficiency. So by that, I mean your metabolism. So your hormones are a part of your metabolism, your internal functions. They're all going to work more optimally when we have that muscle mass. Also, it does burn fat at rest. And actually, being at rest makes up for 70% of our total daily energy expenditure, which means your working out is a very small piece of the pie. It actually only makes up about 20% of your daily energy expenditure, so your calories burned. So it's a very small piece of the pie compared to being at rest. So when you have a more higher amount of muscle mass, you're already increasing that. It's not like you're burning tons of fat at rest, but you're increasing the efficiency of how your body takes in calories. Hopefully that makes sense. So also more lean muscle is then obviously a reduced amount of what I'm going to call unnecessary body fat. And by that, I mean for health reasons. We all need a certain amount of body fat, which I explained in my last episode, in the fat loss episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go catch that one. Maybe do that one first before this episode. But there is a certain amount of body fat that we do need just to kind of protect everything that's going on. We do need that, but um, unnecessary body fat, I mean, just for health reasons, just to reduce chances of stroke, heart attack, high cholesterol, that type of stuff. Just keeping things healthy. Reducing risks of diabetes and chronic illnesses that are preventable. That's what I mean by that. So I'm not saying we have to reach a certain physique or anything, but because we are talking about it, we're talking about the physical, we're talking about that. It also relates to health and, just increasing our chances of, reducing our chances of having those illnesses and chronic illnesses that can be prevented that we don't want to have. Also, building muscle increases our endurance, our strength, and our power. So, you're going to be able to do some incredible things when you build muscle mass. In fact, I also mentioned this in a previous podcast episode. I'm a runner. I love running, more so for mental stress release than anything. It's just so soothing to me. But my performance for running and my endurance for running has significantly improved since I've started building muscle. Like my power and everything is just, it's not even comparable to what I used to be able to do. I can go farther. I have just more strength, more energy, everything. So that's really cool too. And honestly, just it's so cool. And it is really satisfying to have that feeling of feeling strong. Personally, I really enjoy that. And I think that you would too. And just feeling and seeing how you can really, get those, lack of better words, gains, and really see what your body's capable of. It's just super cool. I just think that muscle building is so much fun. But that's my opinion. So now I do want to talk about some differences. There actually are some spectrums when it comes to muscle building. So you may be already really building muscle in a sense of muscular endurance. So there's muscular endurance and then there's muscle building. So muscular endurance is kind of when you're doing those lower weights and higher reps. So when you're first starting out, this is totally a normal thing to do. And honestly, what I think is great to do because you're getting into that technique, you're getting into the form, you're just kind of getting used to weightlifting and how it feels. And so I think that this is a really good place to start. So lower weight, I'm thinking like kind of your 2 pounds, 5 pounds, kind of verging on that 8 pounds. Those are your lower weights that are going to help you increase that muscular endurance. And you're going to have higher reps. So you're looking at probably from 12, 15 to 20 reps of a certain movement. Whereas muscle building, you're actually using higher amounts of weights. So you're kind of looking at that 10, 12, 15, 20, and beyond. And you're doing what is called progressive overload. So you're actually using higher weights, lower reps, because you're really going to feel that resistance and your muscles are going to fatigue a lot faster. However, because of progressive overload, when you're lifting heavy enough, it's sending that signal to your body that it is supposed to build the muscle, and you're actually tearing microfibers in that muscle and repairing it, and it's going to increase in size over time. So super cool to think about, and something to think about, because if muscle building is your goal, lower weights, like I said, they have their place, but they're not going to get you to where you want to go for size. They're going to do endurance for you. So you're going to have that, you're going to be able to get through those workouts, and you're going to have that foundation, but you're not going to really build muscle unless you are doing the weight necessary to go to failure for your muscles. So you should be feeling by kind of that 5 reps, 5 to 8 reps is usually kind of the amount that you would do for a heavier weight. You should be feeling like it's failure. Anything, if you can't do it, let's say if you're getting to 3 reps and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this, I would say go to a lighter weight, and then work your way up. You can always work your way up. So also important to remember throughout this entire episode, remember that I'm talking about building muscle, because there's also what's called a maintenance phase. Because if you think about it, it's like, okay, Jessica, that's great, but how many pounds am I working my way up to? Like, am I going to be lifting 70 pounds? No, no, there's going to be a maintenance phase where you're not increasing weight size, and you're just basically kind of sticking to a certain size of weights for a little while. So don't get afraid. You don't have to continue to work your way up to like extreme amounts of weight. But yeah, just keep in mind, this is building. This is the muscle building episode. So some important considerations I'm going to go over that really pertain to muscle building workouts. So we consider reps, like I had mentioned. So for your building, you're doing lower reps. And then the next step is sets. So you're doing higher sets. For example, if you were doing a strength training program, you would be doing about 5 reps, 5 to 8 reps. If you're doing 5 reps, I would say go to that kind of 3 to 5 sets. And then if you're doing 8, you can even do 2 to 3 sets. So it really depends, but they really go hand in hand. The next thing is intensity. How are you feeling? Do you feel like you are going to your max? Not to the point of hurting yourself, but are you going to that maximum threshold? Or are you kind of like, I could probably up this a little bit? Tempo is actually a huge thing as well. This is something I honestly believe you can focus on as you kind of get more conditioned to strength training. The reason is because it kind of changes the game. So in the beginning, you're really into it, and just focus on lifting in general. Then you can focus on tempo later, because it does switch things up. So once you kind of reach that size you're wanting and you're still in that muscle building phase, you can switch up the tempo and go super slow with your reps, and that's going to be another game changer. So instead of increasing your weights, you can just adjust your tempo, and that's going to give you results as well, which is super cool. Also, your rest intervals with weight training, this is huge. And if you come from a background of cardio, this is going to be a struggle for you, because it was for me. I come from a background of cardio, and the wait or the rest times are insane, sometimes up to 3 minutes between exercises. So I'll give you an example. Bicep curls, they are my favorite. If I have a go-to move, it is bicep curls. So if we're doing a set of, a rep of 5 bicep curls, and we're going to do 4 sets in between each set. So I just did 5. Let's say I actually rest 3 minutes. Like that is crazy. And that is a good reason, or sorry, that is a reason why a lot of the weight training and the strength training workouts are longer in duration. And sometimes that's scary. Like, whoa, I'll be working out for an hour? That's crazy. But it's actually because your rest times are longer because you need to have maximum recovery. There are several reasons for that. So the first reason is because you are pushing your muscle to its absolute max. So in order to be able to lift heavy that next set, you need to let your muscle fully recover. And that's between that 2 to 3 minute mark. That's really going to get you back into that mode. And it's going to give you the optimal efficiency when you do that next set because your muscles did recover. So the rest intervals are super important and underestimated and really not even really considered. So super important difference that you would find in strength training. Volume. So again, are you lifting heavy enough? And then frequency. How often are you strength training? If you are trying to build muscle, my kind of minimum amount of strength training days is 3. You could do 2 days and then do a metcon or like a metabolic conditioning, like you could find in the free workout bonus. You could definitely do that. But I would say if you are trying to build, 3 is kind of your minimum. 4, stretching to 5, 5 is your max for sure, because rest and recovery is huge. You are really putting, I want to say strain. Strain is kind of a negative word, but it's basically what you're doing. You're straining your muscles. You're really working them hard. They need to recover. Otherwise, your body is just going to be under tons of stress. So 5 is your max. 3 is kind of like pretty much your best bet. 4 is like awesome. But yeah, so what's your frequency? How consistent are you being? Are you doing that each week? Are you only doing that for however long? That's super important. And then of course duration of the workout. But usually you're kind of that 45 to hour mark for muscle building, potentially even more, up to that hour and a half. But generally, I like to program my workouts for that 45 to hour mark. And I saw great results doing that for my own training. So that's what you can kind of expect. So I would say usually the periodization for muscle building, you can expect with muscle building to take a while. Fat loss is different. I know that I had talked in my fat loss episode about a smaller calorie deficit, so obviously the results would take longer to achieve. But with muscle building, it's almost that much longer. There are exceptions to this, of course, for newbies, which is what I was. I was a newbie to weightlifting. I saw results in 3 months. And that's pretty good. That's not always the case. If you're an experienced weightlifter or you've done weightlifting in the past, it's a little harder to build and to gain that size. But yeah, if you're a newbie, you can definitely end up seeing results within that 3-month mark. But sometimes it can take from even up to 6 all the way to 12 months. The only thing with that is nutrition wise, when we consider that, you're going to be eating in a surplus. To build muscle, you're going to have that surplus. So in fat loss, it's the deficit, 1 to 300 calorie deficit. In muscle building, you're looking at that 1 to 300 calorie surplus of food because you need the energy and the calories in order to build muscle. Muscle is fueled. You have to fuel it to produce growth. So when you're on that surplus for a long time, that could potentially be hard on you as well. So if you ever find that you're like, I don't know if I want to be in that surplus for that long, a great marker is that 3-month mark, which is similar to the fat loss one, the 12 weeks. Do 12 weeks of building muscle, being really good with your intensity, your volume, everything, and that surplus of calories, and you will see results. Then do a maintenance phase. Go back to it again, then at another point. A really good way to do it is that, so 3 months maintenance phase, and then another 3 months to make up a year. So basically, 2 muscle building training um, plans in a year is basically what that would mean. That's a really good and I would say safe, like your body will feel safe because it's not being stressed for like super long periods of time. Um, and when I say stress too, I don't want you to get worried because I talked about that before. That small amount of calorie surplus is not going to put things into overdrive for you. And again, calories from things that are going to really give you nutrients and fuel and energize your body. That being said, muscle building starts with a good foundation. A good foundation is critical. So by that I mean, how are you feeling? How is your hormones? How is your metabolism? How is your menstrual cycle? How is your energy levels? Are you feeling good? Generally, a muscle building phase, such as this one, comes after you would do the fat loss and then a maintenance phase, and after you reach homeostasis after the fat loss. The reason for that is obviously because of your surplus of calories. So you're really in a different phase. So that's muscle building generally comes after fat loss if that was a goal. If you're already at a place where you're actually, for myself, just naturally, that's how I am. I was smaller, and because of my habits in the past, I just didn't feed myself enough. And back then I did tons of cardio, so I was real almost like wasting away. And so I was at a point where I'm like, let's do this because I want to feel healthy. I want to feel strong. I want to feel good again. So I started eating really well and getting those nutrients and then having that surplus of calories and then doing strength training at the same time. And the results were just phenomenal. So much so that that's why this is my favorite episode because it's life changing. And things just totally turned around, energy levels and just everything. So yeah, making sure you have that strong foundation. Um, how do you feel about your stability? How do you feel about your balance? That's another thing. A lot of my clients start out with a balance training workout just because that's huge, having that stability so that you prevent injury. Another thing that's super important is making sure you have a strong core. So I include core and ab exercises in my programs because the core is really it's the center of everything. And if your core is strong, you're going to be able to really manage what you're doing, and you're going to be able to prevent injury a lot more, and you're just going to feel more stabilized. So core is super important to include, even if you want to take it as far as just focusing on a core program for even 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even bumping up to that 12 weeks, and getting that core super duper strong so that you can then move into that muscle building phase. That's also an option. So I also want to clarify with the surplus of calories, because I know that that can kind of be scary as well. But the thing about muscle building is when you are trying to increase muscle mass, what's happening is when you're eating, it's going to signal to your body how to store it. So if you are doing intense training, like by that I mean high volume, like high weights, and really trying to force the muscles to build, what it's going to do is when you put food into your body, it's going to signal that your muscles need those calories. They need that fuel because they need the rest, recovery, they need the size, they need the energy to build. Whereas if you weren't doing the strength training, that could potentially turn into fat cells. It could be stored as fat instead of muscle. So that's the thing that you don't have to be afraid of, is that those surplus of calories are going to turn into fat after you maybe just went through a fat loss phase. But if you're staying consistent with your strength training and you are doing progressive overload, it's going to go to your muscles. So don't be afraid. Some of it may get started as fat, depending on what your macros look like. Macros are going to look different across the board for everybody. It's totally custom to what you want to do. But don't be afraid and don't fear that surplus, because that strength training is going to make it go to that place of muscles instead of fat loss, or sorry, instead of fat gain. And that being said, as much as that's scary, it is so important, just because your body needs that energy. And if you don't give it that energy, it will be significantly under a bad kind of stress, not a good kind of stress, a bad kind of stress. So getting plenty of protein, carbs for energy, and making sure that you're eating incrementally throughout the day, so that every 3 to 4 hours, it's across the board for fat loss and muscle building and maintenance, is keeping that 3 to 4 hour mark of, fueling your body. Um, because if your body doesn't have that, it's going to look for it elsewhere. And the last place it's going to put it is in your rest and recovery and in your muscle building, because your body is trying to survive. So, whatever it thinks is most important, which is usually if it's under bad stress, it wants to preserve fat because it's scared that you're not feeding it and that you aren't trying to preserve yourself. So, it's going to hold on to what is going to be able to help it survive, which is fat. So, make sure that you do try to get that surplus, and try to fuel your body and give it the nutrients it needs. Now, as far as tracking calories, because I know I've been talking about those with the deficit and the surplus, that's going to be another episode in the future. So make sure you tune in for that. This is going to give you a super good foundation. But as far as tracking calories, I want to keep that as a separate episode, because I think that's also going to be kind of a packed information episode. So I don't want to make this one super long. So I'm going to skip over that. But we will get into that topic, but don't be, my word to you now would be not to be super focused on getting exact calories, and be more focused on fueling yourself and making yourself feel nourished and good and energized. So moving into another important thing with muscle building is rest and recovery. And I want to kind of explain that as well, because that may be a misconception too, is a rest day. Sometimes we can, especially if we have that idea of surplus of calories, we might get into that mindset where we're like, oh my goodness, I don't want to gain fat back after maybe I just lost it. So I want to, on my rest days, I'm going to do cardio, and I'm going to like do HIIT exercises and like make sure I'm burning calories. But I actually discourage that. Metabolic conditioning exercises and HIIT training can be put in to your program. But what I mean is just don't think that on your rest days, that's what you need to be doing. On your rest days, literally rest. Actually rest and just try to recover. Um, an active recovery is great, but don't make it too intense. Make it low impact. So again, doing those neat activities. So that might be walking around, your neighborhood, or just doing laundry, or small things throughout the day, or maybe taking the stairs at work. Those low impact activities are really going to help with your recovery as well. I want to encourage you, with the rest, it is important, but not to sit for super long periods of time just because that blood flow needs to continue. Everything needs to regulate. So, not sitting for super long periods of time, but definitely not breaking out into a super sweat on those rest days. I encourage you to, take that time to just be kind of like mellow, I guess, if that makes sense. So again, kind of pushing your muscles to their potential, preserving them with the rest and recovery, and protecting them. And then also remembering that we want to move into the hemostasis. So that's going to be the maintenance phase. And we'll talk about that in the next episode. But making that your new norm, because muscle building, actually, if you don't preserve it, your muscle will wear away. And that's just the reality of it. So preserving it will be something that we'll cover in the next episode, so that you know how to maintain what you've worked so hard for. So just remembering that this is a long-term game. And I also want to encourage you that, with strength training, a lot of it is repetitive. And some people may even find it, if you're not super into lifting weights, you may even begin to find it a little bit boring, just because you're going to be repeating so much of the movements. Because that's really truly how you're going to build the muscle. It's not even about mixing it up and shocking your body. With building muscle, it's just repetitive movements and really signaling to that muscle that the goal is to build. So my encouragement to you is, find out how to make it enjoyable for yourself, and wrap yourself in that mindset of, your why behind it, and really understanding what your outcome and why you want to do this. Because that's what's going to help you and motivate you, because like I said, it could potentially become redundant. So find ways that it's going to be enjoyable for you. So I just want to encourage you that way. But yeah, honestly, I can't say enough good things about building muscle. I've enjoyed the process so much. Right now, I'm actually in the maintenance phase as of this episode being recorded. I just finished my muscle building. So I am excited to also get into the next episode. I think it's going to be really fun, because I'm really relating to it because that's the phase I'm at right now. So I think that there's going to be a lot of useful and helpful information in that episode for you as well. So make sure that you check it out. Don't give up now. Don't give up on listening to the series yet. We still have a lot of good stuff coming. So definitely join me for the next episode. And honestly, I have that's all I have for you today for muscle building. If I missed anything, I will be sure to let you guys know and try to keep you updated and informed. But yeah, if you haven't downloaded the bonuses yet, please do so. So you have to do that on my website. All the information will be in the info bar, whether this is the YouTube channel or a podcast platform. It should be in your info bar for you. If not, message me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is jess.coleman, KOHLMAN. And yeah, that is all I have for you today, guys. Hope you have an awesome day. Until next episode.